My husband, Mike, seemed different lately. He stopped being clingy, stopped acting cute, and always had this cold expression on his face. I was confused. Then suddenly floating text appeared in front of my eyes. The male lead has been reborn. This time he won't love this cheating woman anymore. In his past life, he cut ties with his family to be with her, only to catch her cheating. He tried everything to win her back, even believed in those crazy superstitions. But she never came back to see him before he died. The male lead is finally going to be an independent man. I stared at my husband, usually when I got home. He'd rush over, whining about how exhausting the housework was. But now he was coldly washing underwear. Mike wrung out my bra and slapped it onto the drying rack. He turned around, his handsome face completely cold. Normally, he'd run over complaining about how hard his day was, demanding I comfort him for half an hour. But now he said nothing. His beautiful eyes glanced at me once, then quickly looked away. Was he mad? I quickly apologized. Sorry I had to work late. Did you eat dinner? Before Mike could answer, the floating comments started scrolling. The cheater always comes home to the male lead's homemade dinner. She's waiting for him to cook now. But our male lead won't love you anymore. He won't serve you anymore. The comments calling me a cheater made me frown. I may not be crazy about this husband, but I'd never betrayed him. Calling me a cheater was ridiculous. Sure enough, Mike's cold voice rang out. I'm not cooking today. He watched my reaction, then deliberately added in a flat tone. And I won't be cooking anymore, ever. The cheater is definitely going to cry. The male lead used to make her different meals every day. Now no more love-cooked meals. Time to regret it, hey. I agreed easily, honestly. I was relieved. Truth is, Mike's cooking was terrible. He'd make these weird dishes like dragon fruit stir-fry with meat, or chicken leg custard tarts. I never wanted to eat them. But seeing his hopeful eyes, I'd force it down. Mike froze. Seemingly shocked, I accepted it so calmly. His expression darkened, looking somewhat hurt. Then he grabbed his phone, pressing his thin lips together. His slender fingers tapped the screen. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. It was a delivery person from a Michelin-starred restaurant. Soon, beautifully packaged dishes covered the entire table. Mike sat at the table, eyes narrowed, looking elegant and expensive. Eat, he said coldly. Since you don't care about my effort, we'll eat this kind of food from now on. No home-cooked warmth. The comments went wild. Male lead, baby. You're still too soft. Why give her such good food? You don't understand, this is sarcasm. The male lead is using money to humiliate her, telling her that without love, even expensive food tastes like nothing. Yes, make the cheater eat cold industrial food. Make her miss the male lead's unique homemade meals. I looked at the beautifully colored foie gras and steak in front of me. I cut a piece and put it in my mouth. So delicious I could cry goodbye forever. Fruit stir-fry, I devoured everything. After finishing, I looked up to see Mike's plate untouched across from me. His dark eyes locked onto me. Slender fingers gripped the knife and fork tightly. His eyes were slightly red. See, the male lead's heart is broken. The cheater ate so happily. Doesn't care at all if he made it or not. He's still hoping she'll ask, why won't you cook for me anymore? But she didn't, she just ate. Even though the male lead wants revenge, he's still that fool who craves love. My heart jumped. I didn't know what happened in the past life, but seeing Mike's restrained, hurt expression, my heart softened. After all, he was my legally recognized husband. Why aren't you eating? I asked him. I don't like eating this kind of food with no warmth, no family feeling. Mike's fork stabbed into the steak, like he was taking out his frustration. I sighed, stood up and walked into the kitchen. His voice came from behind me. What are you doing? I haven't cleaned the kitchen yet. Halfway through, he forcibly changed his tone. Whatever, I ignored him. Skillfully boiled water and grabbed some noodles from the cabinet. Cut some green onions, fried an egg, blanched 2 baby bok choy, and finally drizzled some sesame oil and soy sauce. 5 minutes later, I walked out with a steaming bowl of simple noodles. I placed it in front of Mike. "Can you eat this?" Mike suddenly froze. His fan-like lashes blinking. He looked down at the bowl. Simple, plain broth with a fried egg on top. The steam fogged up his lashes, making it hard for him to open his eyes. He should have coldly pushed the bowl away and expressed his sarcasm. But Mike still picked up his chopsticks. This was the first meal Emily had ever made for him in both lifetimes. He picked up some noodles and put them in his mouth. I continued eating my dessert. The comments suddenly exploded. "Wait, why are you crying? Did the female lead never cook for him in his past life? This lifetime, one bowl of noodles and he's won over." I looked up in alarm. Mike was eating the noodles in small bites. His lashes trembled lightly. Tears hanging on them, his overwhelming beauty hit me instantly. I handed him a tissue. "Are you okay?" Mike looked up at me with resentful eyes. He said quietly, "It's too salty." Despite complaining, he drank all the soup. Outside the window, the night was deep. I kept thinking about what the comments said. Who exactly was Mike? As I was thinking, the comments started scrolling again. "Feel bad for the male lead baby. He's not asleep at all. He's been silently crying with his back to the female lead. Afraid of making noise and disturbing the female lead. He's been biting the corner of the blanket. Random viewer here, why is the male lead crying? They've been married a year. And the female lead baby hasn't touched the male lead once. The male lead must be heartbroken. Just say he's sexually frustrated. You guys don't understand. You only want to be intimate with someone you love. This shows the cheater doesn't love the male lead baby at all. That's why he's sad." I looked carefully. Mike was wrapped in the blanket, lying on the edge of the bed. His body was almost stretched into a straight line, leaving me only the back of his head. Remembering the comments, I asked tentatively, "Mike, are you asleep?" "I was asleep. Why do you wake me up?" Blake's muffled voice came from under the blanket. His tone was unfriendly, but his exposed ear tip trembled slightly. The comments rang in my ears again. The male lead works out every day. Has a great body, even bought sexy lingerie and sprayed perfume. Today is actually their wedding anniversary. Wait, isn't the male lead supposed to be independent now? Why is he still dressing up to please someone you don't understand? The male lead is deliberately seducing the cheater. Then will cruelly reject her, making her suffer. The air indeed carried a faint scent of freesia. I reached out and touched Mike's face. What? This guy was crying again. I really didn't understand how he was only 2 years younger than me. But cried so easily. Mike's ears were thin, red as if they dripped blood. I reached out and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. "Today is our wedding anniversary." "Sorry, I just remembered. I'll get you a gift tomorrow, okay? You know, I've been starting my business. I've been so busy, so tired," I said softly, my voice gentle. His body stiffened. He said coldly, "Why are you telling me this?" "I need to sleep." His tone was like ice that wouldn't melt. My hand moved downward. "You want this?" I asked tentatively. His breath hitched violently. The moment my hand grazed the smooth, cool fabric covering his waist, his entire body seized. "Wait, is that silk?" I traced the edge of the material. It was delicate, laced, and completely out of character for the everyday sweatpants Mike usually wore to bed. The faint scent of freesia suddenly made a lot more sense. He had bathed, lotioned, and dressed up in something scandalous, all while pretending to be asleep. "Don't touch me," he said, his voice trembling. He grabbed my wrist, his large, warm hand completely enveloping mine, but he didn't push me away. His grip was entirely devoid of strength. It was an anchor, not a shield. The floating text illuminated the dark bedroom in a flurry of neon blue. "Male lead, hold the line. Don't fall for the cheater's honey trap. He's gripping her wrist to throw her off the bed, right? Right? Who are we kidding?" His heart rate just spiked to 130. The male lead is completely useless against her. He bought that lingerie set for $500 just to be cruelly rejected tonight, and now he doesn't know what to do. I couldn't help the soft exhale of amusement that escaped my lips. He was 26, a grown man who had severed ties with a billionaire family to marry an exhausted startup founder, and here he was, playing a tragic, heartbroken victim while wearing a $500 silk trap. "Mike," I whispered, pressing my chest against his broad, tense back, are you really going to reject me on our anniversary? You forgot, he spat out, his voice muffled by the pillow. You didn't even remember until you came to bed. In your heart, I'm just a convenience. I'm sorry, I murmured, pressing a soft kiss to the back of his neck. He shivered violently. My startup is in its final funding round. I've been drowning in paperwork, but that's an excuse. I neglected you, and I am deeply sorry. Turn around, please? He stayed rigid for a long 10 seconds, then, with a pathetic, frustrated little noise, he rolled over. In the dim moonlight filtering through the blinds, he looked devastating. His dark hair was messy, his beautiful eyes were red-rimmed and swimming in unshed tears, and he was biting his lower lip so hard it was almost white, and the lingerie, it was a sheer, black silk top that left absolutely nothing to the imagination, contrasting sharply with the hard, muscular lines of his chest and abdomen. He looked away, his jaw clenched tight. If you think you can just placate me with sex. I don't, I said honestly. I moved my hand to cup his cheek, gently swiping a stray tear with my thumb. I want to be close to my husband. Is that allowed? Mike let out a choked sob, his facade crumbling instantly. He threw his arms around my neck, pulling me down into a desperate, bruising kiss. It was messy, tasting of salt and mint, filled with a year's worth of pent-up longing and some deep-seated grief I didn't fully understand yet. Ah! He caved. He lasted exactly 3 minutes. Male lead, where is your backbone? You said you'd make her regret. Look at him crying while kissing her. He loves her so much it hurts. I can't watch. He is a pathetic, beautiful wet cat. I ignored the glowing text, entirely consumed by the man beneath me. Mike was frantic, his hands mapped every inch of my back, pulling me closer as if he was afraid I would vanish into thin air. Emily, he gasped against my lips. Emily, I hate you. I really, really hate you. I know, I breathed back, kissing his jaw, his neck. You're heartless. I know. Don't leave me, he whimpered, wrapping his long legs around mine. Not again, please. Not again, the word struck a chord, echoing the bizarre claims of the floating text, but as his skin burned against mine and the night deepened, the mysteries of his past life took a backseat to the overwhelming reality of him. That night, the independent, cold man was nowhere to be found. He was hopelessly clingy, whining softly whenever I pulled away for air, demanding every ounce of my attention until the early hours of the morning. When I woke up the next day, the bed beside me was empty, but the sheets were still warm. I stretched, feeling a satisfying soreness in my muscles, and threw on a robe. As I walked out into the living room, the smell of burnt toast assaulted my nose. In the kitchen, Mike was standing over the stove, wearing an apron over his white t-shirt. He looked exhausted but radiant, though he was currently trying to scrape the charred black bits off a piece of toast with a butter knife. I leaned against the doorframe, watching him. Suddenly, the floating text appeared. The male lead woke up at 6 a.m. to make a loving breakfast, but then remembered he's supposed to be a cold, reborn Sigma male. He purposefully burned the toast to show her he doesn't care anymore. Genius. Sarcastic breakfast. That will show the cheater. I stared at the text, then at Mike, who was glaring at the toast as if it had personally offended him. He threw the burnt bread into the trash and plated 2 slightly mangled sunny-side-up eggs. He turned, jumping slightly when he saw me. He quickly schooled his features into a mask of icy indifference. You're awake, he said coolly. I made breakfast, but don't think this means anything. I just happened to make too much. Mike, I said, pointing to the 2 plates, there are exactly 2 eggs. How is that making too much? His ears flushed crimson. Eat it or don't, I don't care. He sat down, crossing his arms and looking out the window, looking every bit like a haughty prince. I sat across from him, picked up my fork, and took a bite. The egg was perfectly runny, seasoned with just the right amount of salt and pepper. It's delicious, I said. His eyes darted toward me, a spark of pure joy flashing in them before he violently suppressed it. Whatever. I ate in silence, my mind racing. The comments were consistent. They called me a cheater, they said in the past life, he caught me, tried to win me back, and eventually died alone while I never came back to see him. I knew my own character, I loved my work, I was ambitious, and I could be negligent of my personal life, but I was intensely loyal. I would never cheat. If this past life was real, something catastrophic must have happened to cause such a horrific misunderstanding. Mike, I asked casually, sipping my coffee, do you know a man who might want to break us up? Mike froze, the fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the ceramic plate. The color drained from his face, leaving him deathly pale. Red alert. She's testing him. The cheater is bringing up David. In the past life, she left Mike for David, her co-founder, because David had the funding to save her company. Mike begged her on his knees in the rain, but she got into David's car and drove away. Male lead, don't show weakness. Throw the coffee in her face. David. My heart turned to ice. David was my co-founder and the CFO of my startup, Aita. He was a charming, slick guy who handled all our investor relations. I didn't like him personally, but he was strictly a business partner. Why do you ask? Mike said, his voice dropping an octave, shaking with a barely contained rage that I had never heard from him before. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the table. Are you planning on introducing someone to me? No, I said firmly, holding his gaze. I've just been reviewing some company files recently, and I had a weird feeling, just office politics, don't worry about it. I stood up, walked over to him, and pressed a kiss to his tense forehead. I have to go to work, thank you for breakfast, honey. As I walked out the door, the comments scrolled frantically. She kissed him. The male lead's brain is short-circuiting. He's touching his forehead, he's smiling, he's smiling. Stop smiling, you fool, she's going to see David. When I arrived at the Aura Tech offices, the atmosphere was buzzing. We were closing a Series B funding round that would finally put us on the map. I walked straight into David's office. He was sitting at his desk, wearing a smug smile, talking on the phone. He hung up when I entered. Emily. Our fearless leader, David beamed. You look radiant. Anniversary night went well with the house husband? Cut the crap, David, I said, sitting opposite him. I want to see the full financial logs for the last 3 quarters, unredacted, including the offshore accounts you've been managing for the angel investors. David's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. We've been over this. The investors require discretion. You handle the tech and the product. I handle the money. That's our dynamic. I'm the CEO. Fetch the logs by noon, or I'm calling for an external audit. I left his office, my stomach churning. I didn't have proof yet, but the puzzle pieces from the floating text were coming together. If the past life was real, David had likely embezzled funds or set up a massive fraud scheme. When it inevitably blew up, the company would have faced ruin. If my past life self found out, what would she have done? I knew exactly what I would do. I would take the fall. I would do anything to protect the people I loved from the legal and financial fallout. Oh, my God. I slumped into my office chair, rubbing my temples. Mike had severed ties with his ultra-wealthy, powerful family to marry me. If my company went down for massive financial fraud, the debts would ruin him too. In that past life, to protect him, I must have pushed him away. I must have faked an affair with David to make Mike hate me, forcing him to divorce me so he wouldn't be burdened with my debt or jail time. The male lead is in a taxi. He's heading to her office. He tracked her phone. He knows she's alone with David. Time for the reborn male lead to kick down the door and catch them. I blinked at the text floating near my monitor. Mike was coming here? Suddenly, my office door swung open. David walked in, holding a stack of papers. He locked the door behind him and closed the blinds. Emily, we need to talk, David said, his tone dropping its usual fake cheer. You're getting too nosy. We are inches away from a $10 million buyout. Don't ruin this for us. Ruin this? You're cooking the books, David. You're inflating our user acquisition numbers to defraud the buyers. It's called playing the game. David snapped, walking toward my desk, leaning over it aggressively. Without me, you're just a nerd with a pipe dream. You need me, and if you try to blow the whistle, I'll make sure the paper trail points directly to your signature. I set it up that way from day one. Is that so? I said, leaning back in my chair, slipping my hand into my pocket to press record on my phone. Before David could speak again, the locked door rattled violently. Then, a heavy crash echoed through the room. The frosted glass of the door shattered inward. David leaped back in terror. Standing in the doorway, breathing heavily, was Mike. He looked like a dark avenging angel. He was wearing a sharp, tailored black suit that I hadn't seen since our wedding day. His hair was slicked back, his eyes dark and murderous. He held a heavy metal fire extinguisher, which he had clearly just used to smash the lock. Yes. The male lead is here. Catch them red-handed. Look at how cold and domineering he is. So cool. Wait, why are they fully clothed and standing 3 feet apart? Mike dropped the fire extinguisher. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. He glared at David, then looked at me, his eyes searching for any sign of guilt, any unbuttoned collar or smeared lipstick. Mike? I asked, standing up. What are you doing here? I knew it, Mike said, his voice cracking slightly despite his best efforts to sound icy. I knew you couldn't stay away from him. I came to give you the divorce papers. David looked between us, bewildered. Divorce? What is your crazy husband talking about? Shut up, David, Mike snarled, stepping into the room. The sheer aura of authority he radiated made David shrink back. It was a glimpse of the billionaire he used to be. I won't be a fool this time, Emily. I won't beg. You want him? You can have him, but you don't get to humiliate me again. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded document. His hands were shaking. He's shaking because he's heartbroken. Hold back your tears, male lead. Be a man. I didn't look at the papers. I walked around my desk, ignoring David completely, and stood right in front of Mike. Mike, I said gently, look at me. I don't want to look at you, he whispered, turning his head away, his jaw rigid. I said, look at me. I reached up, grabbing his chin, and forced him to meet my eyes. I am going to ask you a question, and I want you to listen very carefully. Why do you think I would ever want him over you? Mike's eyes flashed with hurt, because he can give you what you want. He has money, he has connections. I gave up my family for you, I have nothing. In the past, you said I was just a useless burden. You said you only ever loved his ambition. David scoffed nervously. Okay, this is some weird roleplay. I'm going to call security. I said shut up. I barked at David without breaking eye contact with Mike. I took a deep breath. Mike, you are my husband. You are the man who learned to cook, terribly, but you tried, just to see me smile. You are the man who waits up for me every night. You think I care about his money? You think I care about his connections? I turned to David. David, you're fired. David froze. What? You can't fire me. I own 40% of this company. You've been embezzling funds and committing corporate fraud. I have the audio recording of you admitting to framing me right here in my pocket, I said coldly, and I already forwarded the preliminary IP logs to the SEC an hour ago. The police will be here in about 10 minutes. David's face drained of all color. You're bluffing. Try me. Get out of my office before I let my husband use that fire extinguisher on your head. David stumbled backward, looking at my dead-serious expression, and then at Mike's towering, intimidating frame. He scrambled out of the shattered door, sprinting down the hallway. Silence descended on the office. The floating text was completely frozen, then, it exploded. What? What the hell just happened? She fired David? She called the cops on her lover? Plot twist. The script is completely derailed. Mike stood frozen, the divorce papers slipping from his trembling fingers to the floor. He stared at me, his beautiful eyes wide with a mix of shock, confusion, and a desperate, fragile hope. You fired him? Mike whispered. He was stealing from us, Mike, I said, stepping closer, wrapping my arms around his waist. He was rigid as a board. He's a criminal. Why on earth would I want to be with him? But Mike's voice broke, tears immediately welled up in his eyes, completely destroying his cool CEO persona. But you left me for him, you got in his car, you told me not to look for you. My heart ached. I pulled him tightly against me, resting my head against his chest. I could hear his heart hammering like a trapped bird. Mike, I don't know what nightmare you had, or what you remember from a past life, I said softly, but you have to use your logic. If David was committing massive fraud, and the company was going down, what would happen to the CEO? Mike swallowed hard. You would go to prison, or face millions in debt. And if I was married to you, the estranged son of the Sterling family, what would happen to you? Mike stopped breathing. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Wait. Is the female lead saying she took the fall? Did she fake the affair so Mike would divorce her and escape the debt? I would never let you sink with me, Mike, I whispered, looking up into his tear-filled eyes. If I pushed you away, if I was cruel to you, it was to save you, because I love you. You are the only man I have ever loved. A choked, gut-wrenching sob tore from Mike's throat. His knees actually buckled. I had to support his weight as he collapsed against me, burying his face in the crook of my neck. He cried with the sheer, agonizing relief of a man who had carried the weight of a horrific betrayal for 2 lifetimes, only to find out it was an act of profound, self-sacrificing love. I'm sorry, he wailed, his arms wrapping around me so tight my ribs ached. I'm so sorry. I thought you hated me. I hated you so much, but I couldn't stop loving you. It hurt so much, it hurt so much. I know, baby, I'm here, I'm right here, I soothed, stroking his hair, letting him soak my collar with his tears. I am sobbing, the male lead is sobbing, we are all sobbing. We misjudged the female lead. She's a hero. She died in prison in the past life. She died of illness in a cold cell so he could live freely. My heart is broken, please love him forever, female lead. I read the text, a chill running down my spine. Died in a cold cell. The sheer tragedy of it made my own eyes sting. I held him tighter. I will never leave you, I promised, pressing a kiss to his temple. No matter what happens, we face it together. No more lies, no more pushing away. The aftermath of David's arrest was chaotic, but it was a good kind of chaos. With the fraud exposed early, Oratech was saved from a fatal blow. The investors were initially spooked, but I managed to secure a bridge loan by putting my own assets on the line. Through it all, Mike underwent a complete transformation. The cold, reborn Sigma male act was thrown entirely out the window. He reverted to his true nature, a deeply devoted, intensely affectionate, and completely unashamed house husband. Except, he wasn't just staying at home anymore. A week after the office incident, I came home exhausted. The moment I opened the door, the smell of actual, edible food hit me. It wasn't Michelin-starred delivery, and it wasn't a horrific dragon fruit stir-fry. It smelled like slow-roasted chicken and garlic potatoes. Mike trotted out of the kitchen. He was wearing a ridiculously cute pink apron that said "Kiss the Cook." His eyes lit up the moment he saw me. You're home, he practically beamed, hurrying over to take my coat and briefcase. Before I could even kick off my shoes, he wrapped his arms around my waist, lifting me slightly off the ground, and buried his face in my neck, taking a deep breath. I missed you. I missed you too, I laughed, running my hands through his hair. It smells amazing in here. Did you secretly hire a chef? Mike puffed out his chest proudly. I enrolled in a culinary boot camp. I've been taking classes every day while you're at work. I know my cooking used to be experimental, but I want to take care of you properly. Look at our boy, he's thriving. The pink apron is doing things to me. He's like a giant golden retriever now, no more angst, just pure wife worshipping. We sat down at the table, and he served me. The food was genuinely fantastic. I ate eagerly, while Mike sat across from me, his chin resting on his hands, just watching me eat with a soft, affectionate smile. Aren't you going to eat? I asked, pointing my fork at him. I'm full just watching you, he said earnestly. I rolled my eyes but smiled, reaching over to feed him a piece of potato. He took it happily. By the way, Mike said, his tone turning slightly serious, my father called today. I stopped chewing. Mike's father, Richard Sterling, was a ruthless corporate titan. When Mike refused an arranged marriage to marry me, Richard had cut him off without a dime, mocking him and promising he would come crawling back within a year. What did he want? I asked carefully. He heard about the shakeup at your company. He knows David is out. He offered to buy Oratech out of its current financial slump, on the condition that I divorce you and return to the family. My grip on my fork tightened. And what did you say? Mike smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that suddenly reminded me that he possessed the Sterling family's ruthless genes. I told him to go to hell. I told him my wife is 10 times the business leader he is, and we don't need his dirty money. I felt a rush of warmth, but also a twinge of anxiety. Mike, crossing your father, he could try to crush Oratech just out of spite. Mike reached across the table, taking my hand. Let him try. You protected me in the past life. Now, it's my turn to protect you. I haven't been entirely idle, Over the next few months, I learned exactly what Mike meant. While he loved being my house husband, he was incredibly intelligent. Using an anonymous alias, he had been day trading and angel investing with the small savings he had left. He had quietly amassed a small fortune of his own. When Richard Sterling inevitably tried to hostile take over our primary supplier to squeeze Oratech, an anonymous holding company suddenly bought out the supplier's debt and blocked the move. It took me 3 days to realize the holding company was registered under the name Emily's Loyal Dog LLC. When I confronted Mike about the ridiculous name, he just blushed and hid under the bed covers. The male lead is secretly a financial genius, but uses his powers solely to be a simp. Emily's Loyal Dog LLC. I am crying. He has zero shame. This is the peak male ideal. A year later. The floating text had become a rare occurrence. As Mike's trauma from the past life healed, the system or whatever magical entity was broadcasting the comments seemed to realize its job was done. It only popped up occasionally, to leave a string of heart emojis when Mike and I were being particularly sweet. It was our 2nd anniversary. We were standing on the balcony of our new penthouse apartment, looking out over the city skyline. Oratech had successfully gone public 2 months prior, making us both incredibly wealthy, but tonight, there were no business calls, no toxic family members, and no misunderstandings. Mike stepped up behind me, wrapping his strong arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. He was wearing a simple white shirt, his body warm against the cool night breeze. What are you thinking about? He murmured, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. Just thinking about how far we've come, I said, leaning back into his embrace. A year ago, you were serving me cold Michelin food and glaring at me like I was your worst enemy. Mike groaned, burying his face in my neck in embarrassment. Please don't remind me. I was such an idiot. I was trying so hard to be the cold, ruthless Reborn protagonist, but every time you looked at me, I just wanted to cry and ask you to hold me. I laughed, turning around in his arms to wrap my hands around his neck. I kind of liked the dramatic version of you. It was very entertaining. Never again, Mike said softly, his eyes looking deeply into mine. There was no pain left in them, only profound, unwavering adoration. I don't need to be reborn, Emily. I just need you, in this life, and every life after. He leaned in, his lips meeting mine in a sweet, lingering kiss. It was gentle, a promise of forever. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a single, final line of floating text drift softly into the night sky before fading into stardust. The story has changed, the tragedy is rewritten, wishing you both a lifetime of happiness. I smiled against Mike's lips, pulling him closer. The past was gone, the future was ours, and my husband was finally exactly where he belonged, right by my side.